I love Sonic Frontiers. It's an awesome game, and here's my review of it. Now, I plan to split the review into 3 separate parts, this of which being the first. Now, disclaimer, I haven't played a lot of the older Sonic games. I have played the 2D games, but not like the older 3D Sonic games. So, for instance, I have not played Sonic Adventure 1, 2, Heroes, 06, but I know of the general consensus of it. It's also been a hot minute since I've actually played Sonic Frontiers, so excuse me if I get a few minor details wrong. And last thing to note, I'm reviewing this before any of the DLC comes out, which can definitely nullify some of my complaints here. And I might do a separate video on the DLC itself, so look out for that. Without further ado, let's get into it. Kronos Island, or the Grass World, is a little formulaic along with all the other islands. They are very similar in looks to other games like Zelda and Elden Ring, if not worse because there aren't a lot of recognizable landmarks that distinguish it from those other games. The ruins are cool, they tie into the story well. I just wish they had more of a purpose than just scenery. I know not everything has to have a purpose, but they just look so cool. It's a shame that whenever I see one later in the game, I just whiz by it, because I know there won't be much there, especially in that 4th island. It's a shame because I feel similarly to those tall towers. I feel like they could have been more utilized if they did something, other than just be a cool place to get to the top of. I'm surprised to say that the quick travel rails in the sky didn't break the immersion of the game for me. I am all about that immersion, so I was scared I wouldn't be as invested into the game with those rails. I think I didn't mind them because I get immersed in a game even when it's a fantasy world. But I think the rails would have been a more well-received addition if you were playing as anybody but Sonic, because, you know, whee! They're nice to use on the 3rd island because of the icy mountains. But other than that, yes, I can see where people are coming from. But personally, I don't think the inclusion of the rails in the terrain are a bad addition. Ares Island, or the Sand World, is probably my favorite in terms of theming and design. I just like how open the southern part of the world is. It's not just the empty like a real desert. There's a good number of enemies and obstacles. It finds a good balance between being open and not having nothing to do in it. Although I will admit, the plateau hilly area can get really annoying to traverse in, but I kinda like that it makes me think in order to get where I need to go, because the whole point of this game is to traverse around the map, so it's nice that there isn't just a straight shot to the thing you need to get, especially since you can get some pretty insane speed in this game. But overall, I do admit they could have made it a little easier to get up the hills. I do find myself audibly sighing every time I can't find a way and are forced to go the opposite direction to get where I need to go, and getting mad when I eventually do fall down those crevices on the top of the hills. Those things are the bane of my existence. Chaos Island, or the Mount Lava World, does the best job in not feeling like it's from another game. It feels closest to a traditional Sonic level theme. I know that the Cyberspace levels are where the Sonic theming comes in, but they didn't have to make it so the open zones are so bland and realistic compared to the other Sonic games. Again, I love the visuals of this island, but there is one major problem that makes it one of my least favorites: the traversal. On this island, there is a ton of mountains, cracks in the ground, and holes that just ruin my enjoyment in this island. Not to mention, at this point, I was starting to get really bored of the gameplay progression that has been the same for each island, but more on that later. Another thing I hear talked about a lot with this island is the islands on the outskirts of the main one. Now, I didn't reach these the normal way from the eagle enemy. I found a way by the grind rails connecting the islands in a very complicated way. I know a lot of people were frustrated trying to reach those and being stuck on it forever, but to me, there's a difference between just flat out annoying and having to figure things out for myself. Now, hold on. I'm not criticizing anybody's opinion on what things are annoying or not, and in fact, I probably should have felt annoyed at this part too, but I didn't. I was so immersed in the game that I genuinely felt awesome when I did get to those outer islands, through puzzle solving and exploration. And honestly, the mystery of getting to the outer island was probably the best puzzle the game had to offer, in my opinion. It's a shame that Sonic Team seems to do good things by accident, because I don't think this is the experience they had intended for the people that felt this way, if there is any. Next up is Rhea Island, which is the worst island in the game. All this island is used for is just story progression, which isn't a bad thing, but it is when you don't fill the world with anything worthwhile. This is just the top half of Kronos Island, so already you could barely tell it's a separate world. There are 6 giant towers that are evil for some reason, and I'm sorry, it's been a long while since I played through the story. And on top of all of them, you can unlock memories of what the ancient civilization went through on this island. Now the story is cool, but the fact that the only things to do are your main objective, these towers, make this island infamous and bad. There is literally nothing by the trees or ruins or scenery outside the main path from what I could find. Not to mention that they reused the grass theme. All I can hope for is that they flesh out this island with some of the DLC. Next up is Oranos Island. For the longest time, I didn't know how to pronounce it. In fact, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right now. It doesn't help that I thought the O is a Q for the longest time, so I pronounced it Oranos. This island just edges out Ares for being my top favorite. While it might reuse the grassland again, which is a big downer, I love the size and different parts of this world. There's a very cool giant temple, which actually has some stuff around it. Not in it though, sadly, other than a Chaos Emerald. There's a vast flower field, and I love me some flowers. And there's this cool forest area that's way better than the one on Kronos. But don't get me wrong, this is still a grassland. I would have appreciated some other factor to differentiate it more from Kronos and Rhea. Now we get into the more mixed bag part of the game, the cyberspace levels. Now, I definitely think this is a step down from the modern boost games like Colors and Unleashed, but honestly, I didn't mind them that much. The 3D levels, that is. I'm gonna get real with you, I never liked the 2D sections in the Boost Sonic games. I think they hinder the experience by restricting you with better controls suited for 3D while playing in 2D. Basically, I think the 2D levels are not good. I never came back to them, even the ones that were recreations of past levels. The controls were just not suited for this kind of gameplay. But I'm sorry, I'm ranting for too long, more on that in the gameplay video. Some of the 3D ones were pretty cool, and I occasionally went back to them. My favorite level has to be 1-2. I love the song, the level, the obstacles. This is probably just because the tight S-rank time made me play the level over and over again, but I loved that. I wish it wasn't just on that level. I was genuinely empowered to S-rank it, and it became the most memorable level. It's a wonder what challenges can make you feel in games. There are only 4 different themes that they reused in 30 levels. They used Green Hill, Chemical Plant, Sky Sanctuary, and a city theme, which is probably my favorite, because the rest are just old. I'm not gonna lie, I was a bit disappointed when I first noticed this. It made all the levels, especially in the later worlds, more forgetful. But my disappointment was somewhat relieved a bit by recognizing that some of these levels are just remade versions of past stages. Now, in any other circumstances, with any other video game character, I would have been disappointed and angry at this decision to reuse the level designs. But honestly, it feels like Sonic Team really cares. By reusing layouts, it feels like Sonic Team is acknowledging that yes, indeed, those games do still exist, and we are truly looking back on them to see what made these games adored by fans. And these layouts and designs are some of the best in the series, so there's that too. I'll talk about how the cyberspace levels control more in the gameplay section video. Now, the Titan bosses have to be my favorite moments in the game. You first get introduced to them when you nab your first Chaos Emerald of that island. They are these giant monstrosities that tower over you and legitimately look awesome. I love all their designs, and they just make me want to beat them up. Each one feels like they could be their own final boss of a different game. That's how cool they are. You get these epic Sonic early 2000s rock music to jam out to while you're flying in the sky at 100 miles an hour fighting these bosses. I love that they incorporated these cool QuickTime events from Sonic Forces into the bosses, and they're way better than they were in Sonic Forces, and legitimately look awesome. And come on, seeing Sonic chuck a giant flying monster dragon thing into a mountain will never not be boring. I will say the final Titan boss is the worst one. It's not bad, but with each Titan the fight gets more crazier and awesome, so I just got a little bit disappointed at the end. Not to mention the final boss itself is really bad, but I'll go through that more in the story video. Man, I love this game so much. It feels just like the good old days again. The presentation of Sonic Frontiers definitely ranks up there with Super Mario Galaxy and Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I truly felt immersed in this world, although I will admit it did start to lay off toward the end. And I think that's due to the fact that it has you do the same things over and over again in each island except for the 4. I just got really tired at the end there of playing Sonic Frontiers, and I actually took a break just so I could refill myself. I think Sonic Frontiers had a good, strong opening in terms of presentation, but it fell lackluster during the end.